I will try to be brief. A couple things. I know you want to know about rent stabilization, so I'll just talk about that and I'll answer other questions. I also want to talk a little bit about Albany reform, but I'll let someone ask that if you're interested. So rent stabilization, here's where we're at. The law expires. Rent stabilization law, actually other housing protection laws expired June 15th of this year. We've been through this before. These laws expire from time to time. I believe last time in 2003, before that in 1997. Those near expirations got us such wonderful things as vacancy decontrol, which is cutting to the affordable housing stock significantly over the last decade and more. We need, so there's really two things. We need to make absolutely sure rent regulations do not expire. To give you a sense of it, on June 15th, midnight strikes go to the 16th. Who knows what will happen in terms of legal chaos and other things. The level of chaos and of devastation will be, I think, beyond anything that anyone can really conceive of. And it's that true. You know, those words are not political words. They're not hyperbole in this case. They're the appropriate words for what would happen if rent regulations do expire. In addition to extending them, we need to improve them. Something we wanted to do in the Senate last year. While we did have a Democratic majority, we didn't have a majority of senators who were willing to stand up for tenants. We actually have more, though we have fewer Democrats this year, we have more Democrats that are willing to stand up for tenants. We don't have the majority of the House, though, and as you know, in Albany, having the majority really means you drive the agenda, and in some cases really get to decide what gets voted on. So today we had a big rally on the steps of City Hall to call for the rent regulation laws to be extended and approved by the time the budget is done. Which means that if that vote hasn't happened before the budget, it's got to be in the budget. Because if we get a budget done without getting rent regulations extended, then it's too easy in Albany to do nothing, as you know, right? You know, inertia wins, and we can't allow that to happen. So this is a serious, serious battle, and in fact, the most impact this budget that we have is going to be incredibly impactful in a lot of ways that are devastating. The single largest cut on a percentage basis you've ever had in a budget in the state of New York. But rent regulations are a permanent fundamental of who we are, rent protections, right? You talk about public school, public education, public protection, public transportation, and public housing protection are the things that make this city what it is. Any one of those four falls apart, the city falls apart. And so it's a very big deal. The kinds of ways we need to improve it basically are to do away with vacancy decontrol, which is this policy that basically means that there's an incentive for landlords to destabilize neighborhoods so they can destabilize apartments, to destabilize homes so that they can destabilize rents, and also means that over time you will completely lose all rent-regulated units in the city. You've got to do away with vacancy decontrol, or certainly do a whole lot, and that's what we need to do. And at minimum, we need to do a whole lot to save these units. Still, hopefully, next time around, we'll have a Democratic Senate with a majority of senators to support tenants, and a Democratic Assembly. We do have a majority of Assembly members to support tenants, and a Democratic governor. We can actually make even larger improvements next time. But this is, in my view, a truly existential issue, not just for all of us or everyone in this room who is personally affected by it, but for anyone in this room who cares about New York City being a place that has a middle class, that has stability for folks who can't otherwise afford to be homeowners, and has the sort of diversity within neighborhoods that has always marched through. So it's a huge deal. With that, I'll take questions about anything.
Yeah, I'd just like to tell you one thing that, we joined up with Jeanne Wilcke through our executive meeting, and Jeanne Wilcke put it all together for us on our support for rent stabilization renewal. But we've also asked for additional support for tenants' rights. And let me just tell you so you're informed what we're looking at. We're calling upon the New York State Legislature to enact safeguards against unscrupulous landlords and attorneys using the courts to financially bankrupt rent-stabilized controlling tenants. Specifically, the Downtown Independent Democrats asked Albany to write into law safeguards, including punitive and criminal sanctions, to protect against unlawful evictions based on frivolous legal proceedings against rent-protected tenants. These added protections against tenant harassment that have been done in the last are helpful but do not go far enough. The relatively small fines are no match for the devastating legal fees and years of litigation facing tenants protecting their rights. Punitive and criminal sanctions should be sought from landlords and attorneys where it can be shown that eviction cases are either retaliation for asserting rights and or a clear pattern specifically to prevent rent-protected tenants to achieve market rate or higher rents. And we're also asking for a database to follow these particular cases.
That's
Because
great.
what we're seeing, and I'm reading what we put together, but in some, it's people who are basically going $50,000 to $100,000 in debt to save their homes. And you get somebody who comes and buys a building 5 years ago and says, oh, you put in a sink 30 years ago, I'm taking you to court. You hold your month rent in escrow, they say, okay, that's settled, you pay your rent, and then they come after you for something else. So you're constantly building up all these legal fees that are, and there's more than a few cases around. I mean, a woman buzzed my door the other night and said, Jeannie, I got the final eviction notice. And she's in appeals court right now because she goes to California, a few times a year. So, and she's in her 70s, and she's, a photographer, retired, et cetera, et cetera. These are the people we're trying to protect.
And it's great, and it's very, very important, and I'm sure you know this, but one of the biggest drivers of this sort of harassment is vacancy control, because of the incentive landlords have to get folks out, not just to raise the rent on vacancy, which they can do 20% on the vacancy bonus, which is a problem we need to fix. But if they do that enough times, in a short enough period of time, they can get a unit completely destabilized. So in a world of vacancy decontrol, this is an incredibly detailed, sophisticated response to it. In a world where we don't have vacancy decontrol, this is still important, but it's less of a story.
Okay, but we'd like, we'll give this to you in writing, what we're looking for. And if you would please, see if you can address it or.
Absolutely. And also, as we talk about what was in this bill over the next few weeks, get it to me tomorrow, so it's in my head.
Very good. That would be great.
Senator, I want to just take this time because you looked at the Community Board 1 resolution, which in fact calls for Albany to in fact take those amendments that were put in 93, 97, and which in fact weakened rent control. And those resolutions were put together by a committee that was headed by Tom Goodkind, who's here, and you mentioned that it was a particularly well-written resolution. I had you look at it, and it was so well-written that we simply attached that resolution that he read to the Community Board's resolution of February 22nd, which I understand Tom may approve completely.
Yes, it's the Borough President's resolution. The second, it's not Community Board 1, actually. That goes all over Manhattan.
Right, but the one that we wrote on the 22nd is ours.
It's all ours.
All ours.
And you helped.
Right, but there's two things that Tom has been heading up, and I'm really proud of this D.I.D. member. We identified in Lower Manhattan, I believe there's 5,200 rent stabilized units just in the Community Board 1 area that would be gone if this rent stabilization law does not continue. And some people here in this room are living in them. And others of us are in rent stabilized buildings where those rents are inching up with rent control, and we would also be out. So this law is something that is a threat to just about everybody in this room or our neighbors. And I want to just give kudos to Tom, Community Board 1, and also our fellow Community Boards in 2 and 3. This is something that we have to get behind. I know you want to have this sooner than later. If anything besides passing this resolution, which we're going to hopefully pass tonight from D.I.D., beyond that, what else can we do for you?
And just one other piece of kudos to Tom, who, I guess a year ago now, highlighted for my office a decision in the court that basically applied some of what you've seen, re-protecting styles of town, Peter Cooper Village, that would apply in Lower Manhattan as well.
Financial district.
And so
There are 5,000 units, 10,000 residents, even more in the financial district, who are waiting to be stabilized, who should be stabilized, and they were very much hoping for a more democratic Senate. we're hoping that you can lead that charge. The main thing that everyone's hoping for is that coupling of the 421A tax bill with all of these great stabilization proposals. If they're coupled together, will it have a better chance of passing through you in the Senate?
So I think it will have a chance, and I think that, that's got to be sort of a baseline, that you're not going to see 421A unless you see rent. My concern is that 421A is actually already expired right now. They can go a few months and wait on it. We can't get past June 15th. So yes, I think it's very important. I think that, seeing 421A move before.
What are the other tactics then?
The budget, doing everything we can in the budget, both in the Democratic Assembly and also, hopefully, for the first time ever, 30 Democrats, though 4 Democrats claim they're not members of the Democratic Conference, 30 Democrats standing together and saying, we're not going to participate. We've seen that actually matters. This is as fundamental issue to who we are, as, by the way, collective bargaining is to who we are in terms of being able to have a public sector and private sector unions. So this is an issue that rises to that level. Some of the budget comes up, but this is an issue that rises to the level of what you're seeing happen in Wisconsin and Ohio. And sorry, Jeanne, you have one other question.
Is there anything besides voting on the resolution, which
Yes.
of course we will, that we can do in terms of reaching out to people in Albany that we can hear from us?
Yes,
Tenant or whoever, who we have to call?
well, Republican senators from New York City, there are 2 of them, so it's a short list, Senator Golden, Senator Lanza. Very, very important. Senator Golden has many, many rent-stabilized tenants. It's important that he knows that rent-stabilized tenants know what's happening. That's very, very important. And to every senator and assembly person, this idea that it's going to be a terrible budget, we know that, we're going to fight to make it as not terrible as possible. And that's an important fight. And also critically important is rent regulations get extended and improved by the time the budget is done, whether it's in the budget or just before the budget. And those 2 messages, they could not be more important. If ever there was a time to organize a trip to Albany, or to get together with the Tenant back or Real Rent Reform Campaign, some of these other groups, this is really the time to do it. And this issue